This Week with George Stephanopoulos starts right now.
Washington not working.
I am tired of political games.
This is a reasonable offer that reopens the government.
The government shutdown now the longest in history. Our economy paying the price.
We're not pawns on a chessboard. We're people.
Thousands of flights canceled. More widespread disruptions expected as critical food benefits remain frozen for millions of Americans.
We are in a food crisis.
Growing pressure on the White House after Democrats sweep Tuesday's elections.
Tonight, we sent a message.
New York City, breathe this moment in.
With this vote, you guys just screamed from the rooftops.
This morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Democratic Senator Adam Schiff join us live, plus analysis from our Powerhouse Roundtable. And stunning atrocities.
We cannot hear the screams, but as we sit here today, the horror is continuing.
Sudan's 2-year civil war deepens. Reports of mass murder and ethnic violence from Darfur. We'll speak with David Miliband of the International Rescue Committee.
From ABC News, it's This Week. Here now, George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. The only constant is change. That phrase was probably first coined in ancient Greece. It's now an iron law of modern American politics. Last year, voters angry about the cost of living handed Donald Trump the White House. This year, they handed him a message, delivering wins to Democrats across the country. And those victories, for now, have deepened the divide that is paralyzing Washington. The government shutdown, now the longest in American history, and it's bearing down on average Americans. Federal workers furloughed or working without pay. Food stamp recipients wondering how they're going to pay for their next meal. Travelers confounded by flight cancellations that may soon cascade across the system. Congressional correspondent Jay O'Brien starts us off. Good morning, Jay.
Yeah, George, good morning. Day 40 now of this government shutdown. And as the shutdown drags on, those big wins for Democrats on Tuesday night appear to have changed the political calculus on Capitol Hill.
After a dismal 2024 election, Democrats roaring back to life this week.
Hope is alive.
Notching blowout victories in off-year governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey, with campaigns laser-focused on the economy.
The chaos coming out of Washington is killing Virginia jobs. I'm going to declare a state of emergency on day one to drive down your utility costs.
In New York City, 34-year-old Zoran Mamdani winning 50% of the vote with a campaign centered on making the city more affordable.
We will make this city one that working people can love and live in again.
And Californians approving Governor Gavin Newsom's redistricting plan, another major win for Democrats.
Tonight, after poking the bear, this bear roared.
Those results coming as the longest government shutdown in American history drags on. The president acknowledging the gridlock may have hurt Republicans.
The shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans.
But this week, Democrats scaling back their demands to reach a deal. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer offering votes to reopen the government in exchange for a 1-year extension of health care subsidies rather than making them permanent.
Democrats are ready to clear the way to quickly pass a government funding bill that includes health care affordability. We need Republicans to just say yes.
But Republicans refusing to budge.
The Democrat leader's proposal is a non-starter.
Do you have a sense that there is any way that Republicans would entertain negotiating on these tax credits prior to the government reopen?
We can't. We simply can't.
The impacts of the shutdown getting worse by the day. The FAA announcing a 10% reduction in flights at 40 of the country's busiest airports this week due to staffing shortages.
If the shutdown continues and I have controllers that continue to not get paychecks, one of the issues is that I'm going to see less controllers coming to work.
Maggie Sabatino is a lead TSA officer at the Philadelphia International Airport who last got paid on October 11th.
We're not pawns on a chessboard. We're people. We get up every day just like they do, but they're getting a paycheck, and we're not.
Maggie, for the first time, is considering applying for SNAP federal food assistance to help feed her family. But that critical program now caught up in a legal battle. This week, a judge ordering the Trump administration to fully fund SNAP for November, the White House appealing that decision. And late Friday, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson temporarily halting the lower court's order, leaving 42 million Americans who rely on SNAP in limbo. One of them, Simone Wilkes, a working single mom in Detroit who we first met last week.
It has been days where the kids eat and I'll just survive off water.
We checked back in with Simone earlier this week, asking how much money she has left for food.
$23.
You have $23.
Yeah. I do not know what I'm going to do.
And George, the Senate in town this weekend for a rare session. We do know that there are ongoing informal bipartisan negotiations between rank and file senators. Meantime, President Trump ramping up his pressure on Senate Republicans to get rid of the filibuster and be able to pass government funding and any other legislation with just Republican votes. So far, GOP leaders have rejected the president's demands. George.
Okay, Jay, thanks very much. Let's get more on the travel situation now from our transportation correspondent, Gio Benitez. Gio, thanks for coming in this morning. What do we know right now?
Right now, we're looking at 1,000 cancellations today, 1,000 cancellations yesterday, and we're looking at 4,000 delays yesterday. So these numbers just keep going up and up and up and up. Now, this is actually the calm before the storm. That's what a former TSA official said, because it's only going to get worse. In fact, Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, said that at some point, maybe by the holidays, we may see 1 in 5 flights canceled. That is a lot. We're talking up to 20%. If we get there, we just don't know, because we don't know how long this shutdown.
With 20% by Thanksgiving, can people get through that weekend?
They can get through that weekend, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough, because hopefully what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know what, we're canceling this flight, we're canceling that flight, and people can make other plans. But it's going to get tough to get around. Now, the FAA hopes that by having these cancellations in place in advance, they can actually allow people to make these plans and get on flights that actually will take off. They'll be able to sort of slow down the air traffic in the air. But that's also important for safety, right? Because that's what we're so concerned about. We've seen these issues. We saw that UPS flight obviously had nothing to do with this, but safety is such a critical issue. It's on everybody's minds, and that's what they're looking at here.
So what should someone do if their flight is canceled?
So what I like to do is I usually go on the very first flight. That's the very first flight. I want to plan that out. I want to have that airline app on my phone ready to go, because customer service is jammed right now. People are calling customer service all the time. You can make these changes for free on your own, faster than customer service on the app. I also use a website called flightaware.com. And so I use that. Let's say I'm going from, Chicago to Atlanta and my flight was canceled. I can put that same route in FlightAware, and I can see the other flights that are scheduled to go and still get to my destination. And a lot of the airlines are now allowing these refunds because of that. They want people to be able to make these changes.
Gio Benitez, thanks very much.
Thank you, George.
And we are joined now by the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Mr. Bessent, thank you for joining us this morning. We've just heard about all these impacts from the government shutdown right now. Are we starting to see a permanent impact on the economy?
Sure, George, and good to be with you. And we've seen an impact on the economy from day one, but it's getting worse and worse. We had a fantastic economy under President Trump the past 2 quarters, and now there are estimates that the economic growth for this quarter could be cut by as much as half if the shutdown continues. And what your correspondent didn't talk about there, George, was there's, of course, the human cost, and we're going to have the busiest travel day of the year, the day after Thanksgiving. And Americans should look to 5 Democratic senators to come across the aisle to open that. But on the other side, there's also cargo is being slowed down. So, we could end up with shortages, whether it's in our supply chains, whether it's for the holidays. So, cargo and people are both being slowed down here, and that's for safety's sake, George.
The president continues to post about ending the filibuster. Is that the best way to end the shutdown right now? Is that what the administration's position is?
No, George, the best way to do it, and look, you were involved in a lot of these in the 90s, and you basically called the Republicans terrorists, and you said that it is not the responsible party that keeps the government closed. And so what we need is 5 brave, moderate Democratic senators to cross the aisle, because right now it is 52 to 3 5 Democrats can cross the aisle and reopen the government. That's the best way to do it, George.
I can disagree with you about the history there, but we don't need a history lesson right now. We
George,
can talk. Let's talk about.
George.
Let's talk, sir. Let's talk about what's happening right now.
If you want, I've got all your quotes here. I've got all your quotes here, George.
I am sure. I'm sure you do.
And I
went back, let's talk about the situation
read
right
your
now.
book. So you got one purchase on Amazon this week, and that's very much what you said.
It's a mischaracterization of history, but I do want to talk about right now is the best way to end the shutdown right now, to end the filibuster.
The best way is for 5 Democratic senators to come across the aisle. What are we on vote 13, 14, 15? Mike Johnson got the reopening out of the House very quickly. And what's changed since the spring, George, is Chuck Schumer's poll numbers. He had a clean continuing resolution in the spring. And why are Democrats doing this now, George? Again, you've been involved with this. Explain what's changed. Senator Chris Murphy gave the game away this week when he said, well, now it's to our advantage to keep the government closed. They have turned the American people into pawns.
The president has also come forward with a new proposal overnight saying it's time instead to do away with Obamacare, instead to have the money go directly to the people. Do you have a formal proposal to do that?
We don't have a formal proposal, but what I have noticed over time is that the Democrats give all these bills the Orwellian names, the Affordable Care Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and we end up with just the opposite. The Affordable Care Act has become unaffordable, and the Inflation Reduction Act set off the greatest inflation in 50 years.
Well, I'm a little confused because the president has been posting about that overnight and into this morning, but you're not proposing that to the Senate right now?
We're not proposing it to the Senate right now, no.
Then why is the president posting about it?
George, the president's posting about it, but again, we have got to get the government reopened before we do this. We are not going to negotiate with the Democrats until they reopen the government. It's very simple. Reopen the government, then we can have a discussion.
Let's talk about affordability and inflation. That was one of the key concerns that voters said was on their minds as they were voting this Tuesday. It appeared to be the driving force in the elections. But President Trump is still insisting that prices are way down, even though last month's report showed inflation stuck at about 3%. Are Americans worried about inflation just wrong?
Well, George, I can tell you, what we're not going to do is what happened under the Biden administration, where the administration and the media gaslit everyone and said, there's a vibe session. You don't understand how good you have it. And what happened then was we had the worst inflation 40 or 50 years, 22, 23%, but the basket of goods and services for working Americans was up more than 30%. And what we're seeing is we had to stop the increase first. Now we are starting to see prices level off, come down. Gasoline is down, interest rates are down, so mortgages are down, and I think we are making substantial progress on that. And I think over the coming months and the next year, prices are going to come down.
The president says, he just had posted this morning that there's almost no inflation. The consumer price index is higher than it was in the beginning of the year. Electricity rates are rising. So are prices for coffee, beef, vegetables, televisions. And it's not just me. It's not just economists who are saying that. Your own Republican members of Congress are saying that, including Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's look.
I go to the grocery store myself. Grocery prices remain high. Energy prices are high. My electricity bills are higher here in Washington, D.C. at my apartment, and they're also higher at my house in Rome, Georgia, higher than they were a year ago. So affordability is a problem.
How do you respond to Congresswoman Greene?
Well, George, what I would respond to is electricity prices are a state problem. And, I was very interested to see in the earlier clip where the governor-elect of New Jersey said, well, I'm going to bring down energy prices. Well, it was her predecessor, Phil Murphy, who took them up. So, look, there are things that the federal government can control. Local electricity prices are not one of them, but energy prices, gasoline prices are way down. And, we are doing what we can every day. I think we are on a very good path to bringing prices down.
Let's talk about tariffs in the Supreme Court. The president is also posting about tariffs this morning. He's saying people that are against tariffs are fools. We're taking in trillions of dollars. Is that true?
We have over the course of the next few years, we could take in trillions of dollars, George. But the real goal of the tariffs is to rebalance trade and make it more fair. Over time, and the president's goal is to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. For the past 2, 3, 4 decades, we have seen our manufacturing sector gutted. So what would happen over time is we would take in substantial money as factories come back to the U.S., as we're seeing now. I was just down in South Carolina at a rare earth magnet plant and a Boeing plant on Friday. And, that's I believe, 1,500 total new jobs. Tariff income will be substantial, but then that will rebalance. The goal here, George, is to rebalance trade. So tariff income will be substantial at the beginning, it will come down, and then domestic tax revenues will climb as corporate taxes go up and all these high-paying jobs are created.
The president's main argument, though, seems to be that it's about taking in the revenue, and he also promised this morning a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people. How is he going to pay that dividend of $2,000 a person?
It's not about taking in the revenue; it's about rebalancing, and the revenue occurs early on, and then as we rebalance and the jobs come home, then it becomes domestic tax revenue.
Are you worried that the president's focus on revenue, though, which is what he's been focusing on in his public statements, is going to hurt your argument at the Supreme Court?
Not at all. It's completely consistent that the revenues come in at the beginning, then as we rebalance, which is the goal of this, bring back high-paid manufacturing jobs to the U.S., then it will then morph into domestic tax revenues. President Trump has consistently fought for the American worker, and we are seeing trillions of investments in the U.S. that would not have occurred without the tariffs. The other thing, too, is the authority that he uses is called IEPA. It is an emergency authority, and he used that emergency authority. He got the Chinese to the table to negotiate on stopping the precursors for fentanyl drugs. If fentanyl, hundreds of thousands of Americans dying every year, is not an emergency, what is? On October 8th, Chinese threatened to put export controls on rare earth materials. He was able to threaten 100% tariffs, and we were able to negotiate that away. And then finally, in terms of the general tariffs, we are doing these trade deals that would not be possible. We were at a tipping point in terms of the economy, in terms of our trade balance, and we are rebalancing successfully.
Do you have a formal proposal to give a $2,000 dividend to every American?
I haven't spoken to the president about this yet, but it could. The $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms, in lots of ways, George. It could be just the tax decreases that we are seeing on the president's agenda. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans. So, those are substantial deductions that, are being financed in the tax bill.
Secretary, thanks for your time this morning. California Senator Adam Schiff is up next. We'll be right back.
It's now my privilege to present the gavel of the United States House of Representatives to the first woman speaker in our history, the gentlelady from California, Nancy Pelosi.
We have made history. Now let us make progress for the American people.
And Speaker Emeritus Pelosi announced her retirement from Congress this week. We're joined now by one of her proteges, the California Senator Adam Schiff. Adam, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you, Senator, for coming in this morning. I do want to talk about this government shutdown. You saw the interview with Secretary Bessent. President Trump has called for an end to the filibuster. He says that's not the administration's position. He's also called for this direct subsidies to the American people to pay for health care. But he says that's not the official position of the government, of the administration either. He says it's just up to Democratic senators to turn around. Is that going to happen?
No, I certainly hope it isn't going to happen if millions of people are going to retain their health coverage and not have to pay these exorbitant premium increases. George, I'm hearing from people all over California, people with pre-existing conditions, people who tell me their premiums are going to go up $1,000 a month, that they're going to have to drop their coverage. They know that's really bad for them and their families. And we can easily estimate the millions of people that are going to lose access to quality care and the tens of thousands of lives that will be lost. So we need to end this. We proposed something, I think, very reasonable. It was a compromise. Certainly wasn't everything I want, which is a permanent extension of the tax credits. We said, let's extend existing law for a year, give us more time to work on this and reopen the government. And the result from the Republicans was, from the Senate Republicans, no. From the House Republicans, we're staying on vacation. And for the president, I'm going out to play golf. And that's where we are while people are hurting. And one thing that is just so shocking to me, George, in the midst of all this, they're appealing to the Supreme Court for the right to cut off food from people. Who does that? Who works so hard? Who goes all the way through the court system to cut food from people who need it right now? But that's where they're coming from. The cruelty is part of the policy.
How do you respond to the argument that the secretary made that, Senator Schumer was for a clean CR earlier this year? He's turned around for political reasons.
Well, we have a healthcare crisis that has intensified since then. And you've got people on the precipice right now who are getting those notices of losing their health insurance. And what's more, we have the president telling us now, Republicans telling us now, they're not going to honor any agreement we reach with them. They're telling us we'll put money in, whatever money we agree on for a continuing resolution to fund the government, but we're telling you in advance we are going to rescind the funding you want. We're going to cut the funding you want. We're going to cut what the president calls Democrat programs like food for people. So they're telling us they're going to cheat on an agreement. And we need, in whatever agreement we reach, to have some really solid guarantees in that legislation that they simply can't go and renege after it's done.
There have been some talks in the Senate between Republicans and Democrats trying to forge a possible compromise. Is Democratic unity crumbling on this?
No. I think what we're seeing is a lot of cracks within Republicans, as you see now over a dozen Republicans in the House, for example, say they want to fix the Affordable Care Act problems. Those are the cracks I'm seeing. You see cracks, I think, even within the White House, as the president acknowledges that their lack of focus on bringing down costs, the shutdown and all its economic impacts are affecting him. They're dragging him down. So I think what we're seeing from the Republicans is a recognition that they have a responsibility to govern. They control the White House, the House, and the Senate. The American people recognize that, and they need to solve this. And frankly, George, it's not going to happen until the president gets off the golf course, gets out of his ballroom planning, and sits down and negotiates. Otherwise, I think this is going to go on because Senate Republicans aren't going to do anything without the president's agreement and approval, and House Republicans are just content to stay away while people suffer.
The president did make this other proposal overnight, giving the money that goes to the subsidies directly to the American people. Can that work? Will Democrats support it?
We have no idea what the president means by that, except it sounds like what he means is the same old tired proposal of repealing the Affordable Care Act, giving people a benefit in the form of a health savings account, but allowing insurance companies once again to cancel policies and refuse to write policies for people who have pre-existing health conditions. So the same insurance companies he's railing against in those tweets, he is saying, I'm going to give you more power to cancel people's policies and not cover them if they have a pre-existing condition. That was one of the main problems the ACA helped address. So, no, I think what the president is revealing once again, more than 8 years after he came down that golden escalator, they still don't have a health care plan. They're still back to what Trump once called concept of a plan. And in the middle of a shutdown, when people are really hurting, we need more than concepts of a plan. Let's just extend the ACA for a year, reopen the government, and then we can negotiate a more permanent fix to this crisis in healthcare in this country.
When you were running for Senate, you came out against the filibuster. If that comes to the Senate floor, will you vote for it?
I have continued to oppose the filibuster and would be happy to do away with the filibuster. But the question is, do away with it for what reason? I would do away with it so that we can expand and protect people's freedoms and their rights. The Republicans and the president right now are talking about doing away with the filibuster so they can raise people's health care costs. That is the wrong reason to do away with a filibuster. And ultimately, what's going to protect the American people, frankly, are not Senate Republicans who give in to this president all the time, not House Republicans who are not even on the job, not the president, certainly not the Supreme Court, that is his biggest rubber stamp, but what we saw on Tuesday, and that is the voters coming out and rejecting Republicans, rejecting healthcare increased costs, rejecting a president who's more focused on his personal enrichment than he is on trying to help people who are hungry and working to try to keep their families afloat right now.
Senator Schiff, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, George.
Roundtable's up next. We'll be right back.
We're going to lower health care costs. We're going to crack down on predatory pharmaceutical practices and surprise billing.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him.
Here in New Jersey, we know that this nation has not ever been, nor will it ever be, ruled by kings.
Follow-up from this week's elections. Let's talk about it on a roundtable, joined by former New Jersey Governor Christie, former DNC Chair Donna Brazile, and Sarah Isgur, Director of Public Affairs of the Justice Department during President Trump's first term, now the editor of SCOTUS blog. Chris, let me begin with you. You saw Mikey Sherrill's win right there. Were you surprised by the margin of victory?
A little bit surprised, George, but not horribly surprised. Look, this is a combination of two factors in New Jersey. Factor number one was a bad campaign by the Republican nominee. This is a guy who spent more time talking about her record at the Naval Academy, Taylor ham versus pork roll, and who lived in New Jersey longer than he did about the fact that over the last 8 years, Democrats have increased spending in New Jersey by 72% in 8 years and raised every tax but the sales tax to do it. She supported all of it, and he never hit that in the way he needed to. So bad campaign by the Republican. And then Donald Trump is just an absolute millstone around any New Jersey Republican's neck. Take my word for it. And the fact is that you talk about a lot of exit poll stats, but this is the one that struck me the most about how much of a factor Trump was. Among people who say they were unfavorable about both parties, they don't like Democrats and they don't like Republicans, she beat the Republican nominee 83-17 among those voters. They're saying, look, we don't like either party, but you know what we really don't like? We really don't like Donald Trump. And among people who were unfavorable to Trump, she won those voters 93-7.
Not surprising. That's not the message the president took away from this election. How is it going to impact Republicans going forward?
Well, I think you're seeing it right now in the shutdown, for instance. Donald Trump wants them to get rid of the filibuster so that they only need 50 votes to move forward. But you have a lot of Republicans thinking, my gosh, if this is how 2025 went, this is a real sign of how 2026 is going to go, how 2028 potentially is going to go, because when Donald Trump has not been on the ballot, Republicans have faced incredibly high headwinds right now. Now, look, the Democratic Party still has their fundamental problems of who their voters are and the voters that they've lost. But Republicans, I think, already see themselves potentially in the minority in 2 years, and they're not going to be quick to give up some of those minority powers like the filibuster.
One thing that was pretty clear, Donna Brazile, the thing that unites Democrats right now is the issue of affordability.
Absolutely. Look, across the board, whether you're in red states or blue states, Democrats had one focus, and that was the cost of living, the cost of paying your utility bills, the cost of going to the grocery store. Chris, I know you don't want me to show you the Safeway where I shop, but it is true. Democrats had a laser focus on the economy. They had a laser focus on how they can help ordinary Americans. Not only did they beat some of the numbers that we saw in 2024 in New Jersey and in Virginia, but the Democrats exceeded expectations in states that I never thought Democrats were competing in, like in Mississippi. I mean, when you defeat Republicans in Mississippi and in Georgia, this wasn't just a blue state, blue city victory. It was across the country in 30 states where Democrats overperform versus what happened in 2024.
Chris, it does seem that the election results have locked in both sides on Capitol Hill. We don't seem any closer to any kind of reopening of the government.
No, we don't. Look, I think the only thing that's going to end the shutdown is what you see happening with the FAA. As we get closer to Thanksgiving, George, these men and women in both parties are going to have to think about the fact that if people can't travel to go see their families on Thanksgiving, they're going to have problems that may be impossible to repair. And for my party, since they're the ones in charge and Donald Trump is the president, it could be even worse. I still think that the shutdown has predominantly hurt both parties equally. I think it has started now with this FAA business to edge more towards hurting the Republicans more. And one other thing about Georgia, that's going to be a key state next year, a really key state. You got a Senate race there that's going to be very important for Republicans. And you have Brian Kemp term limited. So there's going to be a new race for an open seat for governor. They lost statewide races for public service commissioner in Georgia by double digits to Democrats. So I think that's what Sarah's talking about.
But Sarah, do you see this pressure bearing down on Republicans in a way that's going to change their fundamental position?
Donald Trump can't give up his position right now. He has to come out of this with a win of some kind. Otherwise, I mean, remember, Donald Trump he's not invested in the future of the Republican Party here. He's invested in Donald Trump and Donald Trump's legacy. So he's going to have to come up with a win for Donald Trump.
What does that look like, though? I can't see one.
I know. And at this point, I think you're talking about some sort of temporary, let's do this for 2 months and deal with health care, for instance, in January, just kick the can down the road at some point, because you can't get to Thanksgiving. I think Chris is exactly right. This will be on the Republicans if people can't eat their turkey.
Well, the president last night, George, I know the Treasury Secretary didn't want to address it, but the president put in big caps. I'll just send people the money. Well, you got to send people who are losing their health care, rising premiums, but you also got to bail out ranchers. You got to bail out farmers, soybean farmers. Trump has so many people he has to bail out. He better be careful when he says, I'm going to send you the money, because it's a hell of a lot of money the American people now need to help make
Chris,
ends meet.
this is something that we often paper over, but there does seem to be a pretty serious disconnect between the president and his administration. He calls for ending the filibuster. His Treasury Secretary says that's not really our position. He calls for giving $2,000 to every American. The Treasury Secretary says we don't have a proposal for that. He says that the idea of tariffs is to raise trillions of dollars in revenue. The Treasury Secretary says that's not our position. Is this becoming an issue for the administration?
Not yet, George, but look, this is the way it's always been. And now it's maybe starker now because...
Oh, it was under President Trump.
Under President Trump, yes. Because what you're having now is administration officials who so rarely disagree with him that when they do, even just part from him a little bit, as Secretary of Treasury just did in your interview, it looks like an explosion, right? Because usually they're sitting there, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. The problem is that Donald Trump knows he's a good instinctive politician. And he recognizes instinctively that what happened on Tuesday night is a problem. And now he's trying to scramble to find a way to get out of it. So he's throwing things up on social media to see if something will stick. And here's his Treasury Secretary saying, nah, that won't work. So they communicate to each other amazingly through social media. He throws something up to them. They come on a Sunday show and say yes or no to it. It's an extraordinary way of running a railroad.
It's now in the lap of Republican senators.
I think that's right. And we've seen the Republican senators have no interest in getting rid of the filibuster and no interest in really adopting a lot of Donald Trump's proposals. At the same time, though, they do not have the political capital vis-a-vis Trump to actually make the deal that they need to make to stop this.
They have the power to do it, George, and they should come back. The House should come back and get off their vacation and provide the oversight the American people need, not just in what's happening in the Caribbean, but also what's happening to the American people during this shutdown.
Let me ask each of you before we go, how long do you think this shutdown is going to go on? When does it end?
I think it probably ends sometime the weekend or the Monday before Thanksgiving so that people can wind up getting on airplanes and flying around the country to have Thanksgiving with their families. If they don't do that, George, then people are really going to get angry.
I think it's going to end sooner rather than later, because I think the American people are sending a strong message to Washington. Get back to work and reopen this government.
This is the problem with the shutdowns. This is why we keep having them. There isn't that forcing mechanism anymore because we haven't had a real budget process in 30 years where Congress has gone through all the steps. I agree with Chris. It's going to be right before Thanksgiving when there's actually a forcing mechanism.
Thanks. Thank you all for your time this morning. Up next, CEO of the International Rescue Committee on the humanitarian crisis in Sudan. We'll be right back. 20 years after a devastating war in Sudan sparked global outcry, the region of Darfur is once again engulfed in bloody conflict with hundreds of thousands killed, millions facing famine. Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest.
This week, harrowing images emerging from the Darfur region of Sudan, painting a horrific picture of the escalation in the nation's ongoing civil war. Gut-wrenching footage showing the death, horror and anguish of alleged massacres in the city of El Fasher.
The violence is a horror show. It's very difficult to even describe what we hear in our own words.
The city's been under siege for 18 months before these brutal attacks carried out by the rebel group known as RSF, the powerful paramilitary outfit engaged in a devastating war with the Sudanese military. These satellite images from late October appearing to show bodies in the streets and bloodstains on the ground, gruesome signs of the atrocities visible from space.
The city in under 3 days has become covered in objects consistent with the average length of a human body. And in many of the cases, we see discoloration when there's groups by the berm, which we believe is consistent with people bleeding out.
Days later, the Yale Humanitarian Lab say they identified additional images showing clusters of objects which appear to be mass graves. Aid agencies believe over 100,000 people remain trapped in El Fasher, one of 2 areas where famine conditions have been declared by the UN in Sudan.
Some of them are hiding in holes on the ground in order to protect themselves from shelling. They fear execution.
And while a fraction have been able to flee, the risks of doing so are enormous.
Every single person who's arrived has talked about violence, about dead bodies, about people being killed, about people being kidnapped, about people being kept hostage.
Those who have managed to escape have sought refuge in a camp in Tawila, a town some 40 miles away, already home to 600,000 displaced people. 2 decades ago, similar scenes unfolded in the very same region, sparking global outrage.
Stop the killing now!
The original conflict never fully ended, and 2 years ago, Sudan descended once again into full-blown civil war. The RSF, which evolved from the same militias, is now accused of trying to finish what they began.
This is the final battle of the Darfur genocide that began 20 years ago.
Both the RSF and the Sudanese military are suspected of committing genocide, according to the International Criminal Court. The Trump administration now pushing for a ceasefire, but previous attempts have ultimately failed. For This Week, Ian Pannell, ABC News, London.
Thank you, Ian. We're joined now by the CEO of the International Rescue Committee, David Miliband. David, thank you for coming in this morning. How much access have your teams had to Darfur? What are they seeing and hearing?
Well, we have hundreds of aid workers on the ground in Darfur dealing with the people who fled from El Fasher. That's the capital of North Darfur that was besieged for 500 days. No one can get into El Fasher itself. And what we're saying is that all the estimates are there's at least 200,000 people still stuck inside that city. The people who've made it out are telling us horror stories of mass killings, of rape and pillage of women and families. And what they're saying is that this is the new face of war. It's brutality, impunity, and lawlessness on an absolutely epic scale. And the powers in the region are actually not the US or China. The big powers, the hope for any progress in Darfur runs through Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, through Abu Dhabi, the capital of United Arab Emirates, Cairo, the capital of Egypt. And that's where the diplomatic gridlock is costing so many people their lives.
Do Western countries, including the United States, have any leverage there?
Yes, they do. And the Trump administration has revived something called the Quad. That's the US, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. They are the key players who need to bring diplomatic pressure. And of course, the US has very close relations with all those countries. The activism that we needs to go to a whole new level, though, if lives are to be saved. Because for us to hear reports that from satellites in the air, you can see the blood on the ground because so many people have been killed, that needs to be a real wake-up call for the international system.
We're talking about absolute genocide here.
Well, we're talking about killing of minorities, non-Arab minorities who were the subject of the conflict 20 years ago. In 2019, there was a civilian government in Sudan. The real sin is that they didn't get the support they need. In 2021, a military coup from two different factions. Now those factions are fighting it out, and it's the people who are paying desperate price.
And what kind of ripple effects could we see across Sudan, across the region?
Well, that's a great point, because this is a country not just of 50 million people. It's got 500 kilometers of coastline to the Red Sea. And of course, people are fleeing to South Sudan, to Chad, also actually to as far as Europe. So the ripple effects of this are real, but it's also setting a terrible standard. There's a new global disorder in which conflict zones are subject to no law at all, in which warring parties ignore the laws of war, and in which civilians, not soldiers, are paying the price.
The alarm bell should really be ringing.
Massively, because this is actually setting a new low compared to 20 years ago. The scale of the need today is even 3 or 4 times the level it was 20 years ago, but the response, 10 or 20% of what it was 20 years ago. That's the real alarm bell.
Boy, that is chilling. David Miliband, thanks very much.
Thank you.
They came here to train Americans, part of a multi-billion-dollar project touted by President Trump to create thousands of jobs. Their story, now an example of how Trump's immigration crackdown has collided with his economic agenda. Here's Selina Wang.
These South Korean workers came to help build America's factories. Instead, they were shackled and arrested. Mr. Kim, who asked that we not use his full name or show his face, is one of hundreds of skilled engineers brought to this nearly 3,000-acre Hyundai LG Energy Solution battery plant in southeastern Georgia.
Walk me through what happened on September 4th.
오전 8시경에 이제 저희는 현장에서 출근을 했고, 이제 중간에 이제 조금 수근거리는 소리가 들려서 이제 그걸 알아봤더니 무장한 경찰이 공장 내로 진입을 하고 있다.
For Homeland Security, we have a search warrant for the whole site.
Scores of federal agents swarmed the site, detaining more than 500 workers, including more than 300 from South Korea, contractors for Hyundai and LG.
This, in fact, was the largest single-site enforcement operation in the history of Homeland Security investigations.
그냥 영화에서 보던 완전 무장한 상태였고 드론이나 헬기가 떠다니고 있었고 뭐 당연히 소총류는 당연히 소지를 하고 있었고.
Did they tell you why you were being arrested?
뭐 체포 전이나 구금 전이나 후나 그런 사실은 아예 공지를 해주지 않았고 그 사유에 대해서는 현재까지도 따로 공지받은 바가 없습니다.
Kim says their phones were confiscated. They were loaded onto buses and driven hours away to an ICE detention center. He described the facility as cold and unsanitary, with moldy mattresses, water that smelled so bad he drank as little as possible, and toilets with no privacy.
Did you at any point feel that you were being discriminated against?
저희가 그 팟에 수용이 돼 있을 때 그 교도관들의 태도가 굉장히 부정적이었는데 그걸 넘어서 이제 김정은 얘기를 한다던가 눈을 양쪽으로 찢어서 아시안을 비하한다는 제스처를 취한다던가.
The Korean workers were detained for a week until the governments negotiated for them to return home to Korea. Kim is one of nearly 200 detainees who are now preparing to sue ICE. Among the allegations will be unlawful policing, racial profiling, human rights violations, excessive force, and unlawful arrest.
지금까지도 저희가 왜 그렇게 구금을 당했는지 당국에 대한 사과나 어떠한 해명도 없었고 그런 부분을 좀 바로 잡고자 소송을 진행을 하는 건이고 내가 내 잘못은 없다. 라는 부분을 조금.
Kim says he was in the U.S. legally on a B-1 visa, approved after submitting documentation and a consular interview to justify his work.
It went well, very well.
The head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea says there simply are not enough skilled workers in the U.S. to build these factories.
These are specialists that only Korean workers can do.
The raid shocking one of America's closest allies, coming just weeks after South Korea pledged to invest $350 billion in the U.S.
They treated our workers, even with a residence card and the right visa, they treated like a terrorist.
Even Trump now appearing to distance himself from the raid.
Before they get out, I said they could say they went, they left, and they're going to be coming back.
Hyundai tells ABC the factory is now scheduled to be operational in the first half of 2026. LG Energy Solutions says we immediately suspended all business trips to the U.S. after the raid, but has since resumed construction and travel. Back in Seoul, Kim is continuing the work he did in Georgia, but now providing technical support remotely. He says progress is far slower.
President Trump has since essentially said that this raid was a mistake, that he wanted you and the other workers to stay. And he says that you guys are coming back.
자발적으로 갈 인원은 없겠죠, 당연히. 그런 일을 겪고 자발적으로 미국에 가서 다시 일하는 사람은 분명히 없을 거고.
And George, this raid really underscores that tension between President Trump's immigration crackdown and his economic agenda. Economists warn it could worsen labor shortages and discourage skilled foreign talent. South Korea's president says it's traumatized the workers and could significantly delay factory construction. George?
Selina Wang, thanks. You can see Selina's full report Monday night on ABC News Prime. That is all for us today. Thanks for sharing part of your Sunday with us. Check out World News Tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow on GMA.